Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Women on Wednesdays event. I'm Betsy Fisher Martin, and I'm the executive director of the Women in Politics Institute here at AU. And for those of you who may be new to one of our events, WPI is a nonprofit and nonpartisan institute in AU School of Public Affairs, and we aim to close the gender gap in political leadership. And we do that through research, through conversations like this one, academic programming, campaign training programming that all help women build the skills and the confidence and the networks to lead. And so as we close out our full month of Women's History Month programming, tonight is a perfect ending to that. We have a conversation that actually really fits our mission because it's all about helping you all, helping women grow, lead, and move forward with greater purpose and confidence in their careers and in their communities and in their lives. So we're really pleased to be joined tonight by Emily Lampkin for a conversation about her new book, Duct Tape and White Lies, A Woman's Practical Guide to Real Life Success. Emily is a highly respected speaker and advisor and has had a terrific career in Washington. And she's one of Washington's most trusted connectors through her work as the founder of the Women's Leaders Series. And through her leadership, she has really helped women strengthen their voice and sharpen and extend their networks and step up into leadership. And she's also been kind enough to share her wisdom and her strategies with our institute and our We Lead campaign training program over the years. So we are grateful to her for that as well. And what I find really especially appealing about Emily's approach is how practical and real it is. It meets women sort of all ages where we actually are in the middle of our busy lives and competing demands and big ambitions filled with self-doubt and everything else, right? So it's a really great sort of roadmap, and we're thrilled that she can take us through it with her. And I think that message is going to resonate with a lot of you all, especially young women who are early in your careers and asking some real questions. You know, how do I build confidence? How do I find my voice? How do I create opportunities for myself? How do I move forward? So thank you, Emily, for being here and helping us kind of go through some of those questions. And speaking of questions too, please feel free to put yours in. Don't be shy. This is all about using your voice. So I expect to see a lot of questions in the comment and the question tab on your screen. So feel free to type those in during our discussion, and we'll save some time for those as we go or through the end. So with that, Emily, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Betsy. Want to start with thanking you for being somebody, both to me and who has the reputation you've earned around town, as being a woman who has chosen to be a woman leader and to do it with grace and kindness. So I'm grateful to you.
Well, thank you. And I wish starting out in my career, I would have had some of your great advice in the book.
Oh,
So let's start, Emily, with this great title, okay, because it gets people thinking, and you can explain it to us a little bit. Duct Tape and White Lies. Tell us, what that really is meant to capture in the book.
so it began as the answer I always gave people when they asked, primarily women, would ask around town, how do you do it all,
Yeah.
Emily? And I wanted to dissuade everybody from thinking that my life was perfect because I know oftentimes people's lives look terrific from the
Right.
outside. And by the way, perfection is unattainable and miserable. And we all need more fun and less perfection. And I wanted everybody to know you can have what you want, but we live our lives in the messy middle, and that's okay.
And I do think with perfection, right? It's sort of, and especially in these days with, Instagram and social media, and everything is just kind of filtered to look like perfection in so many ways. And life is not like that, you know?
It's not. I mean, we all piece this together all day, every day. In a recent interview, someone asked me, what does a typical day look like for you? What does it look like for you raising a family, having a job, doing all of these things over the last 25 years. And I said, every day is different. We all know that. We all appreciate you'll get a call with some bad news. You think you don't have a quiz that day. All of that stuff is just how we deal with life. And that is where we really make our mark as women leaders. It is how we choose to carry ourselves in life. And I always use the phrase, no one dictates my character but me. How
Mhm.
you choose to carry yourself is incredibly important.
And you outline in the book, you've said women who thrive tend to be strong in three main areas: selling you, widening the circle, and going now. So, could you walk us through a little bit of that and what those ideas mean for those who haven't read the book yet?
Yes. For years, while I was working in Washington in politics and government and business, I was observing what made women successful, and not just the ones with fancy titles, but who was thriving in their life, who was getting up in the morning and liked their life. And I realized over the course of time, taking notes on my phone, that these women excelled in three areas. Selling you. They had built a message around themselves. They knew what their competition or opposition had on them, and they were heading them off with a positive message about themselves. They knew how men and women communicate differently. By the way, if you're communicating with men the same way you're communicating with women, you're losing. Our brains are wired differently. We approach things different. And I'm going to stop and give you a really quick example of this because I think it's critical. We women are looking for consensus and commonality amongst ourselves. That's often why our conversations take longer to start. Men's brains are wired that in a conversation, somebody's the one up and somebody's the one down. And this is all important because when I'm talking to women, I like to use the term we. We like to have this commonality, and that term works better. I am rarely going to interrupt a woman. That may hurt her feelings, it may upset her. With a man, I'm going to use the term I. And when you're talking to them, it
Mhm.
is really important that you take credit for your accomplishments. And you've got to be clear. You can't be dancing around the sides on it. They don't pick up on the dancing around the sides thing. They need it clearly laid out. I will even interrupt a man, but the most important thing to a man is that you show respect. Respect is actually more important to men than love. And so
Mm.
when you're doing this, I will say something such as, if I'm going to interrupt them, say, oh, you'll appreciate this. I'm going to show respect and I'm going to get their buy-in before I even start. So
Mm.
that was one of the things that is critical about being great in communicating. And finally, you need to have a selling you pitch. It's all outlined in the book. But what you have to do is start asking for what you want.
Right.
We never get things unless we ask. We're not always going to get it. Second is widening the circle. You need to build and maintain a dynamic network, both in person and on social media. And finally, going now. More than 50% of the women on this globe are unsatisfied with their lives because they gave up on their dreams. And I'm not talking about that dream when we were little that we wanted to be a cowgirl or supermodel. I'm talking about the stuff that if you stop and spend a few moments with yourself, you know are important to you. And we need to get going. And I use this term dream slashers. And none of you have to be worried if you're not familiar with the term because I made it up. But these are all the things we do to get in our own way. And what I find is most of the time when women are not thriving, it's because they're in their own way.
Yeah. And I want to go through each of these things with you a little more in depth. On the selling you front, I remember you speaking of kind of how women and men speaking to them differently. You told this great story too about when you were speaking to We Lead about how to ask a man for help. That men, like if you need something, men want to be helpful.
They're naturally fixers.
Yes.
So when you need to vent about a bad day, that's typically better for moms, girlfriends, and therapists. They are not good at that. But if you need help, and they respond to literally that term, I need your help, or I could use your help. And I've been told at times that that is not very feminist. I can't think of anything more feminist than understanding who your audience is and going to them in a way that you're going to get what you want. And if you
Yeah.
say this, they'll go do it. And all they're asking for in return is a thank you.
Yeah. Now, a lot of young women are uncomfortable talking about themselves, selling what they can do, right? It's hard for so many women. Many of us were taught, I'm from the South, right? That's not polite. You can't be doing that. How do you, why is that so hard for so many women? And how do we think about trying to be a little more forward facing on that?
I was just doing a TV interview in New York with an anchor who's in her 60s, and she said she still struggles with this.
Yeah.
And it only took time over the course of her career, to your point about wish we knew all of this earlier.
Yeah.
And so lucky women on this tonight, that she realized she couldn't just do the job really well. She had to go tell people about how she did her job really well. One of our strengths as women is storytelling. And rather than reading your resume,
Hmm.
you need to be able to tell a fast story, 30 to 60 seconds, where you introduce yourself and you tell a story of kind of who you are in your career path or whatever the environment you're in and what it is you want. And it's not a comfortable place for us. To your point, there's a lot of reasons there. There's cultural context. There's again just the way women's brains work, all of that that get in our way. But we have to get comfortable doing that. If you want to get ahead, you've got to get comfortable doing that.
And there's ways to do it that, you can speak of your accomplishments, speak what you did, but you don't have to be like, oh, she's bragging all the time because nobody wants to be around that either, right?
They don't. Those are the try too hards.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I am very practical. I have a Midwest practicality about me. The only way I know how to get good at this, the only way I got good at this was by practicing. You try something out. You see how it goes. See how you need to adapt it along the way. I talk about in the book and in the Women Leader series this person I call a swimsuit friend. And that's that friend of yours that you would take shopping with you to buy a swimsuit because she's going to tell you the honest truth.
Hmm.
And put something together. Here's how I would sell myself. And practice it with that swimsuit friend because she's going to give you honest feedback about how you may need to adjust it. Does it come off right? Are you just stuck in your own head and you nailed it and you don't sound braggadocious? You just think you do.
And what are some of those communication habits that we fall into that hold us back? We always hear about, apologizing too much, that kind of a thing.
We apologize too
Yeah.
much. And
Yeah.
and not only do we all need to get out of that habit ourselves,
Yeah.
but we need to help each other get out of that habit. One thing I do when women apologize to me when it's not necessary is I tell them, "Oh, you didn't owe me apology. We do that too much."
Hmm.
Just to remind everybody in a nice way, we all got to get out of the habit. Oversharing, especially at work, oversharing information. And when you are balancing a lot, if it's that your mom's sick or you've got young kids or anything, we often provide too much information about what we have going on in our life. I always tell the story, you can see it over my shoulder. I have three boys who played football. Every fall, my priority was those football games. And if somebody asked me for a meeting at the time when one of my boys was going to be on the football field, I told them, remember, I also believe in the value of white lies. I tell them I already have a meeting at that time. Well, here's some other ideas for a time we can meet. It's none of your business where I am. And it leads people to have the opportunity to decide if your priorities are what they think your priorities should be. And we've got to not let people have that
Hmm.
option.
And you've also told the story too, speaking of the duct tape, that you've had like, picking up the kids from school and you have like a daily conference call at 6:30 and you've got like a seat full of kids
I
and
mean,
you,
literally,
right?
it was literally, and that one sticks out in my head because it was more than any other merger and acquisition I worked on, was the one where literally every Gucci Gulch lobbyist and lawyer was on this call, and it was me. I was the only woman. I am probably 20 years younger than the rest of them, and I assure you, all of them are sitting in their gilded offices without a care in the world. And I'm in full panic because I have to pick up those boys by 6 p.m. from daycare. And we've got to drive home and they are tired and they are hungry. So I would hand out Pez dispensers to them with candy. And there's lots of people who would be happy to sit in judgment of me for doing that in order to keep them quiet, in order to get through that call. I don't care.
Yeah.
I can't worry about that.
Just like get it done, right?
Which is another one we get stuck in. What
Yeah.
do other people
Gonna
judge
say.
my trade-offs?
Yes.
You
Yeah.
can't worry about what other people are going to think about your trade-offs that you make in order to make the day work.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned, and you have this whole section kind of in the book, when to say what to whom, right? Going back to that point too, because there's also like when to post what to what too, is something I think that, people should think about as well.
I think social media is such an important and useful tool, but it
Hmm.
can be a massive hindrance. I had hired a woman as a contractor a couple of years ago, and she had told me that she had to cancel our call at the last minute because she was sick. And next thing I do, I see her on social media singing and dancing in the rain in New York City, where she doesn't live with her boyfriend. You got to be really smart if you're job hunting, if you
Yeah.
have
If
clients,
that white
about what's
lie,
out there.
that white lies can turn into a big problem.
Not good.
Yeah.
Not good.
Yeah.
Unimpressed.
So once you have sort of this clear sense kind of your own voice, the next challenge is kind of figuring out how to build those relationships. And so you talk about widening the circle, which is much more than sort of networking. Why do you frame it that way, widening the circle?
First, I think it's important for us to remember that our network extends way beyond
Yeah.
somebody we meet at a conference or an event or a specific networking event. That we have friends and family. We also have all these people I call facilitators who are really important in our life. If it's the person who gets your coffee at the coffee shop every morning who knows what your order is, so you don't have to stand in line, that means you bought back 10 minutes of time. All of these people are important to widening the circle. You also, and we go through all these different types of people that you should have in your network. When you look at your network, you can't assume this is the person who's going to be important for this thing I want right now. You have to look at this as an opportunity to meet more people because you never know who's going to be helpful or useful or have insight. I talk about DC in particular. DC, the finance community in New York and the entertainment community in Hollywood have a lot in common. You're looking for two things, people and information. You can gain a lot of information just talking to the valet while you're waiting for your car on what's going on in town. And all of that better informs decisions you're going to make. Finally, perspective,
Hmm.
especially in this town. I got good in this business, and you don't get good in this business unless you're on one team or the other. And, but I do not limit my network in any way based on who agrees with me on things. That's not useful, and that's not really smart because we, first of all, have a lot more in common than we have different. And second of all, I want to have as many contacts as possible. Some of my biggest cheerleaders in town, some of the people who are the best at referring business my way, are people who I agree with on nothing on policy, who we've scratched each other's eyes out in political battles here. But there's a respect for who you are. And it also, you build confidence over the time by doing that.
Don't you think that's getting harder and harder these days in
No,
Washington?
no.
No?
No, I would disagree. No, I have at no point have I found it more difficult to be with a crowd that is a mix of people who agree, disagree.
Maybe more difficult is the right word, but it's more rare that you are at social occasions I have found in DC that include a mix of folks from different political parties. Would you agree
Unless
with that?
you're at my house, right?
Yeah, yeah, your house is different, but normally these days, not half as much as I don't think it used to be.
I do think that things have shifted a little
Yeah.
bit. I mean, I think you're right about that. But back to dictating your
Yeah.
character,
Yeah.
I dictate my character and I'm bringing everybody together.
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem with it. I mean, meaning I don't have people who misbehave in these settings
Yeah.
either because of it.
You have a stat in the book. Women in the US and globally are 28% less likely than men to have a strong network. So this is something that's important.
And can I tell you how much time I spent thinking about why that's the case? Because
Yeah.
I mean, my husband is one of the biggest lobbyists in town, and I still interact with so many more people than he does every day. And I'm trying to figure out how that could be. And then I realized, like many things, there are things we could, put our head through a wall trying to figure out why it is, or we can just fix it. And
Yeah.
so my goal was, let's just fix it. And I want to share with your audience some of my favorite tips for networking
Good,
because
good,
it's
good.
not as bad as you think it is.
You anticipated my next question.
Yay.
Yeah.
We're kindred spirits.
So what are some of those good tips?
I've been given the green light. Can I
Yeah.
go? Okay.
Take away. Yeah.
First one, never go to an event without a plan.
Mm.
And not even just, I'm not even just talking about these official networking events. Don't
Yeah.
go to your sorority meeting, go to anything without having a plan. And your plan could be as simple as, I'm going to go sit by somebody I don't know as well and get to know them better. That's going to be my plan. And maybe I'm going to meet three new people and thank the host for having me. That way I get invited next time. Or you may be looking for somebody very specific where you ask the host, hey, can you introduce me to so and so or point out so and so to me? That's who I'm here with the hope to meet. And I use that host if it's not like an event that has 500 people, I will
Yeah.
go ask the host, even if I know who it is or what they look like, just so I can go up to that person and say, oh, the host just pointed you out to me. I was hoping to meet you. My name's Emily Lampkin. It just gives an extra connection where you don't feel as much like you're stalking somebody.
Or sometimes you could even ask somebody that might know that person,
Of
hey, I
course,
really want to meet so and so. Would you mind introducing me?
introducing me.
And people are more than happy to do that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. My one of my recommendations with women is wear something or carry a handbag or something that's easy to start a conversation with you.
Mm.
Your grandma's brooch, a bright color, a fun pair of shoes. It makes it so much easier. And I use that all the time to start conversations with women about, your scarf is beautiful. Tell me about it. It's a
Hmm.
great way and an easy way to start a conversation with somebody.
And people
Tag
like to
team
talk about themselves more than anything.
to talk.
This is another ways of Washington, right?
Yes, you should know if you have a friend who likes this stuff as well, tag team. And
Yeah.
if you run into somebody you know well at the event, by all means, do not sit in the corner and talk to them. Say, hey, let's go meet people together. Um, scientific data shows it's better if you're going to join a conversation with three or more people. Typically, when there's two people talking, it's more difficult to kind of insert yourself. It also gives you a few minutes to just listen to what the conversation's about before you're
Mhm.
on.
It's less awkward.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Have some questions in the can that you're willing to ask people, to your point, Betsy, because
Yeah.
people like to talk about themselves and always follow up with people.
Well, what does that good follow-up look like?
It's way overthought. It could be a
Yeah.
text, it could be an email, it could be a handwritten note. Um, it just needs to be, hey, I enjoyed meeting you. And one thing I always tell people in the note, let me know if I can ever be of help to you. It's a nice way to not be, I'm
Yes.
immediately looking for something. Or if
Yes.
you're following up and you actually need them,
Yes.
then say something like, can I get 15 minutes of your time? And I always remind people, if someone needs me, they need to make it convenient for me. They have to do it on my schedule. If I
Mm.
need you, I'm
Mm.
surprised how often somebody comes to me and says, I'd like your time, Emily. And then they'll say, only
By the
four
way, I
o'clock.
live in Bethesda.
And you should come to me at 4 o'clock on Tuesday. I'm like, not happening. Yes,
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's another good one. And I always like to think about it too with networking. It's just, it's a two-way street. It should not be a one-way street. Like, and you might not think, and I feel like, I have this conversation with young people all the time, who get intimidated. And it's like, by trying to reach out to other people, it's like, well, and I don't have anything to offer. Well, yes, you do. It's called like, you were talking about traveling. Well, I've got some good restaurant recommendations in that town that you're going to. It doesn't have to be anything huge, but that just so that you have a back and forth and it's not, you're not always calling for a particular way to help yourself,
I
right? Because
agree.
that doesn't sustain a long-term networking. Or I mean that brings us into kind of mentoring. And so once something moves to networking towards having a relationship and a mentorship relationship, like what does that look like, and what do people misunderstand about mentorship?
I have a different opinion on mentorship than a lot of
Hmm.
people. In my mind, it's come to the point where there's this oracle of a person out
Hmm.
there, and you've got to identify them, and they've
Hmm.
got to commit to you. And it's almost like you guys are dating or something, like you're together. And here's what I suggest: you should ask for advice and information from as many people as possible. If you think somebody likely has wisdom on a specific area, ask them for, I say that. I believe that you have a lot of wisdom on foreign policy and a lot of experience. I'd like to get your advice on a few things for 15 minutes. How do you like your coffee? I'll bring it with me.
Yeah.
Um, at the same time, you need to realize that everybody who gives you advice, none of them will ever have all the information. You're the only one with all the information. So people are offering just that advice. They're your decisions to make because you have all the information. And then, drum roll, you're the only one who has to live with the decisions you make. So you want to make them yourselves.
You also put a lot of emphasis on reliability. Why is that quality so important, sometimes overlooked?
I talk about when I go do the Women Leaders series, I started out by asking women what are characteristics or traits that they find are important in women leaders. And it doesn't matter where I am in this country, what age group I'm in, or anywhere in the world, I could all but write this list before I walk in the room. I get the same answers every time. And I have only once had a woman tell me a version of reliability.
Mm.
If you cannot be counted on, you cannot be a leader. And I'm not talking about a leader, the president of the United States or the CEO of a company. You can never be somebody who is in the positions that we want to be of confidence and trust if you can't be reliable. When you say you're going to do something, you need to do it. And the worst answer I hear about a lot of things is I'll try.
Mm.
Like, I either need you in or out. And when
Yeah.
you're looking at employers and they hand you something, now, could things go awry? Of course. And then you go back and let them know. We just fell into a sinkhole we didn't see coming. But when you take it, you got to say, I got it.
I got this.
I
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah. You also talk that the third point there is sort of this going now aspect, right? And you talk about going now rather than waiting for sort of the perfect moment. Why do so many women wait?
I don't know why we tend to wait, but I know we make up all sorts of what seem like plausible excuses for why it can't happen.
Yeah.
When I graduate, then I'm going to. When my kids are older, when my mom's not sick, when I lose 20 pounds, when I get the promotion, when I have the first batch of investment money, then I'm going to. It will never come. You've got to go do it. And sometimes I'm asked if you have just one piece of advice. My one piece of advice is you have to take risks. These women who are thriving in their lives, who are satisfied with their lives, take risks. And they take risks because they don't live with regret. And women who live with regret that they woulda, coulda, shoulda are the ones who are not happy with their life.
And what
Now,
do you mean by risks, Emily?
yeah, I was going to say, now
Yeah.
risk is different for all of us.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm talking to young women who are looking to squeak out their portion of the rent and buy a sandwich. That means they can't take the unpaid internship. That is true. Don't take the risk where you can't afford to feed yourself and house yourself.
Yeah.
By the way, I would still apply to the unpaid internship. And if I get it, I would go and say, hey, here's my financial situation. I could do it though for 19.50 an hour. Never turn down a job you haven't been offered. But we all define risk differently. And the more risks you take, the more you realize you can take more. And what the big popular term is now, scale up. Rather than thinking, I could actually apply for that job in Baltimore because it's just 1 hour away. All of a sudden you realize I could apply for the job in Philly and in Boston because I applied for that job in Baltimore and I realized I could live somewhere new and I can make new friends no matter where I am. So taking risks is critical, and things are not going to work out
Yeah.
all the
And
time.
in some ways, it can be easier to take risks earlier in your career.
Well, you oftentimes have fewer obligations. The vast
Obligation.
majority of
Yeah.
American women are caretakers for more
Yeah.
than one person. This is the ideal time in your life where you're likely not a full-time caretaker for someone else.
Yeah. And where you have that kind of flexibility, rather than later on, then it's not easy to go take that job in New York when you've got three kids in school and a partner who's working in the same town, right?
Yes, and they've offered you $34,000 a year for you, your husband, and your three kids. Yes, that job in New York becomes harder to take. Yes.
Yeah. You also say that asking for what you want is a big part of this.
You have to ask for what you
Yeah.
want.
What are some of the smaller asks that young women should start practicing now so the bigger ones can come land easier later?
And by the way, this is not advice I give to young women. It is advice I give to all women
Right.
because most of us are not in the habit of asking. And it is a muscle that you just got to start flexing. Here's some easy asks. I'd like to learn more about you. Um, the one I talk about that always gets a giggle is with women, I often say, I'd like to be your friend. It doesn't mean we're going to be best friends. And nobody, but I've never had a woman turn me down that I said, I'd like us to be friends. I will warn women you can't use that with men because men confuse friendship with other things. So
Yeah.
it's something best used with women. I'd like to learn more about your expertise. Tell me about that trip you just took. Anything where you get used to it. Do you know of any job openings in your industry that I might want to be looking into? That way, you're not specifically asking for a job, a promotion, investment money. That way, when you're asking for that stuff, you're in the habit and it's a lot easier.
I know we talked earlier about sort of the Pez candy in the back seat and sort of work-life balance, but I just want to dive into that a little bit more because this sort of, we're holding it all together. What do you think women most need to hear about sort of this, elusive work-life balance that we're always asked about?
I've never seen it that
Yeah,
somebody's got a great balance. I've never heard anybody who's honest tell me that they've got it and it's nailed. I would love to meet that unicorn if they're out there. I think we have to that's why I said we have got to not judge ourselves and
yeah.
judge how other women do this because all of us are making trade-offs every day in order to make things work. I talk about in the book, if you need to give your kids, those dinosaur chicken nuggets like 3 nights a week, they don't mind, and it is not that bad for them. All three of my kids are healthy and moving
They're
along in
fine.
life, even though they were on that Pez, sugar high during that merger. I mean, like all of this works just fine. And it means that it means there's days you're going to go to work on three
Yeah,
hours of sleep.
yeah. Yeah, and thinking about how women can stay, ambitious without feeling like they have to do everything equally as well all at once, all at the same time, right? I mean, life is a little bit of up and down, treadmill, fast, slow. It doesn't, you always don't have to move at warp speed either.
And you don't always have to be the person
Yeah.
who does everything. I mean,
Yeah.
I give a list of ways to say no without saying no in the book for a reason. We've got to be able to say no.
Yeah. What is thinking about young women now going into careers and then also thinking about women who may be in careers who want to do a second act. Talk a little bit about, transitioning to a different career path, at a later stage in your life and why that's becoming more and more common now and why it's also something I think young people should think about in terms of like the career that you may have in your 20s is may not be the career you have for the rest of your life.
I think we need
And
to
that's
look at
okay.
them less as careers
Yes.
and more as skills we're gaining
Yes.
and opportunities we see in front of us
Yeah.
and taking in what we're enjoying or passionate about. Remember, I was talking about these women being satisfied with their life, that I'm doing something that satisfies me,
Yeah.
that makes me want to get out of bed in the morning. It is the number one thing, a trend that I don't see covered much is women who are 20, 25, 30 years into their career wanting to do something different. And they believe they're the only one who's thinking like that. And I tell them, by the way, everybody else is thinking the exact same thing. And I I ask them to put together a list of what they might do, and they're immediately going to tell me, "Oh, I don't know." And they
Yeah.
know, they exactly know, and they'll put a list together, and then they'll bring it to me, and I'll say, "Okay, do everything on the list. Just try it all." Um, so it allows you the opportunity to know your skills and what you like, and it's a perfect opportunity to try something new and enjoy it.
What does success look like to you now compared or to earlier in your own career?
Betsy, I don't think anybody's ever asked me that. Success has always, I think underlying success has always been to me um, something that I think every day gets me going, not only because I'm enjoying it, but
Hmm.
because it's a challenge. And I like every day being a challenge. I'm going for something. That is what success looks like to me. And I, what I what I do have to constantly get myself out of the habit of doing, and I think many of us do, is not comparing myself to other people. That other people may have made more money than me or have a lot more free time than I do. I can't worry about if somebody has more free time or has more money. I've got to be driving my Emily path. And if I'm comparing myself to others, that is what success doesn't look like
Yeah.
because I'm never going to be satisfied.
Yeah. And it's just not a healthy sort of environment either to put yourself in.
No.
It's like, um, what do you think young women most often underestimate about themselves when they are just starting out, when they are thinking about, what they want to do for jobs, what they're thinking about success looks like? What do they most kind of underestimate about themselves?
They have an immense amount of skills and
Yeah.
expertise, an immense amount of skills and expertise, and things that the rest of us don't have. Arthur Brooks wrote that great book a few years ago, From Strength to Strength, about the panic that people our age, Betsy, have about
Mhm.
them because they have so many skills and just natural insight into things that we don't and how they should capitalize on that. And it doesn't mean if you go in as the social media marketer at a place, you're stuck there forever, but use it to wiggle your way in and then start taking ownership of other stuff.
Exactly. And what about setbacks? Because we've all had them, right? How do you recover from those, a setback or a moment that like really shakes your confidence?
They are hard.
Hmm.
And I had one last year where I had a group of women who really belittled me And it lived with me full time for like 72 hours. I mean,
Mm.
it devastated me. And I got up one morning and I was like, Emily, they're either owning you or they just get erased from your brain today. I mean, you've got to make a choice, Emily. They've now owned 72 hours of your life. How much more time are they getting? I
Mhm.
want to dissuade any of you from thinking that things are different for us because we've been in business for a long time. Parts of this never change. But what I do know is you've got to push forward. There is no other option but to push forward. If you have to step back because you have something big on your plate at that time, that's okay. But you can't quit altogether. One thing I've found about women is when they, for example, gave up their network because they had children and just gave up contact with everybody and then try and come back 10 years later, it's so much more difficult than choosing to sprinkle people in your life over the course of that 10 years. Always keep this around in one form or another. And the book lays out exactly how you can do that. But just
Mhm.
never give up.
Yeah, and I think also too with, with setbacks, I think we sort of internalize them more and think of their consequences more than other people do. Like, you there's a screw up you made at work, like you are like living with that. You
You're
just
like,
keep thinking
and
about
it's
it
like
and
this.
everyone else has moved
Mhm.
on. And you are just every time you think about it, you just, how could I have done that? How could I have made that mistake? Meanwhile, nobody else is even worried about it. And you've spent all this time just beating yourself up.
Yes.
And I feel like we do that, women do that a lot. And it's just like, just move on, right? It's okay.
I had this young woman in Brussels last year, uh, closer to age to most of the women on this call, who was working for an American attorney there. And she said, I know he looks at me and thinks she's young, she's Latina, and she has no experience and doesn't know anything. And I said, I'm guessing what he's thinking is, gosh, I hope I don't say the wrong thing and she sues me. Like, he's not thinking what you're thinking at
Yes,
all. It's not
yes,
even crossing his mind. He's
yes.
like, oh my gosh, she knows all these things I don't even know anything about.
But that kind of negative voice in your head is taking up a lot of space and probably affecting how you're presenting yourself and your own confidence, right?
It affects how we carry ourselves.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Couple of questions here. I think I've hit some of these, but let's see. Oh, this is a good one. Tell us more about the Women's Leader series.
Talking about mini acts, I kind of, my mind is everywhere. I have all sorts of things I'm thinking about. By the way, I have thought to do so many things and I've taken action on so many business ideas. Most of them have been utter failures, but I've learned a lot. I was, as I said, I was observing women and I decided there was nothing else out there like I thought needed to happen for women. So I put together a business plan. I put together my ideas. I went to some people I know who own a training center and said, I want to go try out this idea and I want you to pay for it. And they said, okay. And so I went out and started trying this out and it went gangbusters. And
Mm.
what it is a workshop format. It's interactive. I don't need to talk to people for long periods of time, just at them. And I do it at conferences, at schools, at trade shows, in businesses. And we talk about just what we're talking about here, these skills that are critical to women being leaders and being confident and finding success for themselves. And I now teach it here and around the world. I now teach it as part of the U.S. State Department Speakers Program. Our State Department sends me out to share these core American values of women empowerment and entrepreneurship. And here's what I come back with. We have so much in common. This is the same thing that women are thinking about in Brazil and in
Yeah.
Brussels and in Korea.
So true, right? Let's see. Here's another question. This is a good one about public office. You highlight empathy as an innate skill that uniquely qualifies women for public office. In many instances, we've seen prominent leaders discuss the disadvantages and dangers of empathy in politics. How would you respond to these arguments? Why do you feel that empathy is essential in public office?
I think empathy is a strong skill of women, and it is expected of us. And the only time you notice it with women is when they're missing it. I
Mm,
don't know who's saying that it shouldn't be a part of public office. All of the great women leaders I know are empathetic and have shown empathy. And the example I give that many are familiar with, there was a hearing post October 7th on the Hill with three women who were presidents of their universities. And there were kids who were terrified on their campus, and there were parents who were terrified for their kids on campus. And all of those women were trained by attorneys on how to handle this hearing, and not one of them ever showed any empathy,
mm,
saying, I get that I'm responsible for kids who are scared. You didn't even say that. And guess what happened after that hearing? Two of them lost their jobs
mm-hmm.
for not just showing some basic empathy.
Right, right.
I'm
For
not
being
talking
like
about
too,
crying and
yeah,
blubbering and falling
yeah,
apart and being weird. I'm just
yeah,
talking about, I get it. I get
yeah,
that you're human beings.
yeah. Here's another question about networking. Your work emphasizes, this is from June, your work emphasizes the importance of networks in politics. Access to elite networks is often unequal, especially for women of color or outsiders. How can someone realistically build influence without proximity to power?
I always describe myself, I was nobody important. I'm not from, I mean, I understand I'm not a person of color. I am married to a person of color. I have children who are people of color. Um, but I didn't go to a fancy school, not from a fancy family, had no connections in this town. All I knew is what I had was an ability to interact with human beings, and I was going to out hustle everybody. And at times I hear, we shouldn't have to work harder than everybody else. I don't know what to tell you. I just chose this is the way to get ahead. I'm going to outwork everybody there. Now, you're right. There are so many things I don't get invited to, and in this business and so many businesses are clubby, and there's lots of things I will never be included in. The only thing I can do is bring people together myself.
Mm-hmm.
I chose a long time ago that I was going to bring people together, and I was going to again widen that network amongst people I knew. And here's what I came to find out. Very interesting. I extend invitations to what I call the intimidating people as well. They don't always get to be invited to things, and they don't always get to mix with people who are different, and they're looking for the same thing. 2 second story. I happened to become friends with one of the ambassadors, which was just, if I went into the whole story, just a complete fluke as it is. But it was only because I was the only friendly, normal person at this incredibly stuffy event where she happened to be. And she said, we would like to know more about kind of the politics before the election. I said, why don't I have a bunch of people over on my back patio? I'm like, I was serving back patio, like peanuts and wine on my back patio. And she invited all the ambassadors, and guess what? They came in huge numbers to my back patio rather than all the fancy places in town. I think sometimes we get into our own head too, that things
Mm-hmm.
have to be fancy or somebody fancy has to call it together for us to do the invitations.
Mm-hmm. Um, Here's a question, says you've talked about having a lot of ideas and wanting to do 500 things all at once. This person says, I feel that way all the time. How do you prioritize which ideas you want to pursue if you're equally passionate about all of them?
You need to, again, you're the only one with all the information and you have to
Yeah.
live with your decision. Sometimes I order them or this one's going to be priority one. Sometimes I give them pros and cons. That one's going to cost me a lot of money. This one I can try that won't cost me money,
Yeah.
and just figure out where you go and what works for you.
Yeah. Sort of doing a kind of analysis.
Oh, but I don't let my husband telling me I'm not so get in the way of me doing my ideas though, just so you all know that.
There's a question. We unpacked the duct tape in the title, and there's a question about unpacking the white lies. Alexander is asking, would you tell us more about white lies?
Yeah, and I give examples in the book. One of the examples is there are days where you're having a really rough time at home, and this is part of kind of who you tell what to whom as well. And if I go to work one day and the bottom is dropped out at work, I might tell my executive assistant, like, listen, the bottom's dropped out at home, but I'm not going to tell them all the details.
Yeah.
But almost everybody else I'm going to interact with, a client, a boss, if it's not like, critical, I'm just going to say, fantastic. How are you, Emily? I'm fantastic. That's a white lie, but those are the kind of things you need to say. And the other example I always give is that I taught my boys from an early age, every time we see a new mother, I mean, she's exhausted and looks
Yeah.
awful. We tell her she's beautiful. These are all good things to do in life. These are not bad things.
Here's a question about for someone who feels stuck in a job or unsure of their next move, what's a practical step that you can take on that?
I would start researching things that you're interested in and start gaining information. I would not necessarily leave a job um, because you're not sure where it's going to go. And I would start gathering information because information will often guide you to what you actually want to do. Do I think that you can't quit your job sometimes? I do think you can quit your job sometimes. And I do think sometimes we need to quit a bad job, but not often. I think gathering information about something that excites you is a good way to start when you're in something that you don't like or think is dead ending.
I think people also struggle with just a place of, I don't know if complacency or overly comfortable is the right word, but I've talked to women who feel like, they're fine, like everything is working, but maybe that there's another challenge ahead, or maybe should they start to look for something that's a little bit more exciting, but it's can also be a little bit risky. Like, why give up something that is just fine, that there's not a problem? How do you think about advice on that as well?
I think these are the trade-offs.
Yeah.
And again, don't have all the information. There are
Yeah.
times in your life where it's best to just have a stable job that
Yeah.
isn't overly challenging because it allows you to have other challenges in other parts of your life or to have more free time to do things you want to do. But
Right.
there's other times where you're like, I don't want to be doing this anymore. And that's okay.
Yeah, you just have to take kind of an inventory of whatever priority you have at the time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Well, this has been terrific advice, Emily. Thank you so much for sharing it with us and for sharing your stories and your experience. We have the link in the chat to buy the book, and you purposely did it in paperback, so it's very accessible for people, right? To be
The
able to get a
hardback
hold of.
books can be like
Yeah.
$33. This
Yeah.
one is just under 20, and that was on purpose. Yes.
Yeah. So that's great. And we have a couple of links on the chat, and we hope all of you got as much out of this as we thought you would, because it's really great advice. And we also have some other events coming up. We'll be sure to email you all. We have an event in April for Women on Wednesdays, so we'll let you all know about that. And again, Emily, thanks for sharing your wisdom and your time with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Oh, you women, go do your thing. I'm cheering for you. Thanks.
Awesome. Good night, everybody. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Bye-bye.